Hey, this is Jared. This is my co-host Carrie, and welcome to our first official Tone Wars viewer comments video.
Yeah, thank you so much. We really appreciate all of the comments you guys have been sending in. It helps keep the conversation flowing.
Yeah, we really do appreciate them, and we're here to share our experiences with gear and different other things music-oriented, but we want to hear what you guys think so we can learn from you as well, so it kind of goes both ways. So let's start with our first comment.
That's right, so let's just jump right in. The first topic or video that we're going to cover was about the EVH EL34 review. So, drum roll for the first, right? We have Joe Suma. So Joe commented, the blue channel on this amp is just awful. Barely any gain, way too much bottom end, and flubby no matter how you dial it in. The blue channel on my 6L6 head and combo is night and day better than this in every way possible. I think the EVH really missed the mark with this amp. The blue channel on the Stealth head, the EL34 100 watt and the 50 watt amps has become the channel that most players, including Eddie, use the most, and I was really looking forward to this being similar, but with more of a Marshall flavor, and instead we got this mess. You shouldn't need to use an overdrive pedal on front of any EVH amp to get a usable tone. Huge thumbs down to Fender and Eddie on this one, and those of you who say, I think the blue channel on mine sounds awesome, get your ears checked. I think the next comment, too, was very similar. Let me go to the next one, because Joe commented on this as well. So this one is from Mason Gregory. I just gotta ask, maybe there's a bad preamp tube. I just don't understand why they would intentionally make the blue channel sound like that. I've read that there's some quality control issues with this new model. Just curious. And then Joe Suma replied, I went through the whole tube swap too because I also couldn't believe they would intend for the blue channel to sound like this. Just atrocious.
Just atrocious.
Just atrocious.
Well, I totally agree with Joe. We tried everything. In fact, when Myers brought his amp up, he owns the amp and he's a total EVH fanboy. So he brought it up to my house the night before because we were shooting the episode the next day. And I said, well, bring it in. Let's check it out. Let's, mess around with it. And I put my precision drive, in front of it, which I think is the most beastly overdrive pedal on the market. And it could not wake that amp up at all in that channel. Now, again, let me be clear. The green channel is amazing. The red channel is absolutely amazing. I love both. But that blue channel was like the redheaded stepchild in that family.
I know, you guys had such a hard time with it. I was there that day. I'm always here working behind the scenes, and there was just nothing that you could do.
We spent an hour and a half on that channel at my house with an overdrive pedal in front of it, with it out of it, and we dialed in every EQ position you could possibly think of, and that thing just sounds like absolute crap. So I agree with, whose comment was it about the bad
Mason or Joe? Mason Gregory or Joe Suma?
Probably Mason about what did he say?
Quality control issues.
Yeah, no, about the bad preamp. No, I agree that it actually sounded like there was something wrong with it, and that's how bad the channel was. It actually sounded like it was.
Do you think Fender's listening? Do you think that this is gonna inspire any change on their part?
Well, Fender, if you are listening, please listen, because we're not the only people that feel this way. There's people commenting left and right about it, and there's other people that we've talked to outside of the show.
Even the diehard EVH fans. Yeah. We know one. We've had him on our show. Yeah. Agrees.
No, James totally agrees. He's a total, like I said, he's a fanboy, and he absolutely thought the channel was a joke. Now, can you use it? Well, of course you can. You can use a broken shovel too. But I mean, do you want to? I'd rather have a channel that would rip my face off and stuff it up my rear end. That's what I want out of an amp. I want a channel that will completely annihilate me when I play through it.
Well, moving on from your rear end, let's go to Michael Stewart's comment. Again, it's about the EVH EL34. Here's my thing. Everyone is only showing Eddie-type licks or metal. Same for the guitars being used. I want to hear a Strat and a Tele through an SG and Les Paul, and let's see how it handles clean blues and AC/DC type tones. I want an amp that can give me more than just metal. It would just be nice to see that if that would work with this amp too.
Well, thanks for commenting, Michael. I really appreciate that, and I appreciate your input. So, I mean, I don't own those guitars, and but I definitely can get somebody here with those guitars. And in fact, Paul just told me we're shooting today at the studio. He has a few of those guitars in his studio. So we'll definitely look into getting James back up here with that amp, and we'll shoot another quick video showing what that amp can do with those guitars and that kind of music. So I'd be happy to do that for you. Yeah, so thanks for your input.
All right, so the next category we want to talk about is the mission cabs, which are designed for modelers, the digital platforms, right?
Yep.
So Mac Dre. Mac Dre comments, I'm used to a direct blast from my combo amp, and unfortunately I didn't research enough and bought two 6.5-inch studio monitors. They obviously don't move enough air, so when I'm playing metal or anything with distortion, it's incredibly underwhelming not being able to feel the chugs or the sensation of really digging into a note. My speakers come off as sounding distant, thin, and only what I can describe as cheap or fake for anything other than clean tones. Will this give me the sensation of playing an amp in my room, or will a traditional cab be better if that's the sensation I am chasing?
Great question. First, I would like to say, watch my video on how to choose the right FRFR cab for you, because that will answer some of your questions. But I definitely want to answer your question here as well. I totally get that. I totally understand what you're going through, because number one, if you're dialing in your tone on small speakers, what you're going to do is oversize it. And then what happens is you're gonna overcompensate. You know, you're gonna add all these frequencies in to make it sound bigger, and then you're gonna get into a front of house or a studio situation, and then the engineers are gonna be like, "Oh my God, you got way too much low end, or you got way too much of this frequency and whatever," and your tone's gonna suck, and you're gonna have to take all this stuff out, all these ingredients out. To make it sound right. So definitely get yourself a cab. Like the Mission will definitely give you that bigger cab in the room kind of feel. So for sure. And there's other cabs out there for you as well. So what I would suggest is that you take your digital platform into a store with your guitar, your digital platform, and spend some time in front of each cab. Okay, and make sure that you're getting what you need out of it, because I totally 1,000,000% get what you're saying. I want that too. I want that shin-shattering freaking goodness coming out of that cab. I want it to just make my legs feel like they're going to snap at any second.
And your vocalist loves you for it.
Exactly. Yeah, so, but the thing is you want to feel like you're actually having a powerful chord exchange. You know what I mean? Like when you hit that power chord, you want to feel like I'm melting all the faces in the first 10 rows right now. I get that.
Really, you're just melting your vocalist vocal cords.
That's fine. So we use in-ears now, so we don't have to worry about that. But the thing is I had another guy from Canada, a friend of mine, Dave, and what he did is he took my advice and he went into the store and he took his Helix and put it in front of two different cabs, because he had it, you know, kind of down to two different cabs, and he stood in front of them and he went home with what he wanted, and he's perfectly happy with his choice, and he knows that this is the right cab for him. So whatever you do, I can't say it enough, take your platform, your guitar into a store and stand in front of the cabs and pick the one that does what you want it to do.
So the next comment in the Mission Cab review is from Superhuman. Superhuman asks, how does the Mission FRFR handle low volume?
Great question. I got two answers for you. Number one, that's what I love about the digital platforms hooked through an FRFR cab so much, is that when you have a tube amp, you have to put a huge load on it, which means you got to crank the volume to get the tubes to do what they do, you know, to give you that gain and that compression that you're looking for. The nice thing about the FRFR cabs is that you don't have to do that. You can have any volume, bedroom volume, bedroom volume with your wife sleeping in bed with the same, in the same room with you, all the way up to you want to blow the roof off of your house. And the sound is very consistent.
All the way up to you want to make your neighbors angry.
Exactly, exactly.
Piss your neighbors off.
Yeah,
Volume.
so from sleeping wife to cops coming to your house, anywhere in between, you get the same response out of the cab. So you can practice at any level and you're going to get the response, everything that you want. Now, I will say this, one of the features that I love on some of the cabs out there is that they actually have a low cut on the back. Mm-hmm. You can turn that on or off. So on like one of the cabs that I use, I turn the low cut off when I'm on a lower volume, and I still get that fullness. Mm-hmm. So I don't need to drive it so hard to get that.
Now I know this next one you picked for a special reason. Right? Okay, so Michael Furman, what do you think between the Friedman ASM/ASC versus the Gemini 2?
Oh, okay. So the Gemini by Mission, between that and the Friedman, they have an ASC and an ASM.
Well, because you have both of them, right?
Yes, I have both. I have the Gemini and I have the Friedman. The ASC is the cab version of the Friedman. It just looks like a cab. The ASM is the monitor version, which lays on the floor like a wedge, or you can stand it up and use it as a cab as well. It depends on what you're looking for. Now, with the Gemini, it's a very feature-oriented cab. Mm-hmm. So you have like a Bluetooth option, so you can play backing tracks on it and practice to those, which I think is a fantastic option.
Handy, very handy.
Yeah, it's very handy for writing and rehearsing. Mm-hmm. And you can put a mic in front of it and mic it just like you would a regular cab. So sometimes when you get into a FOH situation, you don't have to worry about telling the guy what you want. Mm-hmm. I mean, because they're used to micing cabs, so he'll just put a mic in front of it like he would anybody else. Mm-hmm. So that's nice. But if you want something that's like really more simplified, but it's just a rage monster, it's just got tons of power and balls, and you want to plug your guitar into it and have just a straight up cab, without some of the options, and I found is a little more transparent than the Friedman would be the way to go. The Mission has more options. The Friedman's more simplified and a little more transparent. So it just depends on which way you want to go. They're both great options.
Right. And I mean, the next category kind of rolls right into that, how to choose the right FRFR, right?
Yeah.
So Pentachronic comments, and we're going to take this one section by section because he has a lot of comments and a lot of questions.
Okay.
Here's my view. The Mission cab sounded the best. However, it is not transparent since you have a situation where you are miking the cabs, which adds another non-linearity to everything. How good is your microphone? It's not a ribbon mic costing over $1,000.
All right, well, that's a great question and a great point, Pentachronic. Chronics.
Pentachronic.
So basically, what I was doing with this video is just showing the different variation of color that you get from cab to cab, so that you could hear sonically what they sound like. There's really no replacement for being in the same room with these products. I mean, because everybody knows when you're in the same room, you get the full effect. You don't just get the sonic part of it, but you get a clearer version of the tone because it's from the cab to your ears. There's no mic in between to color it, number one. And number two, you actually get to feel the SPLs and the thump and the size of the sound that's coming out of it. But, with a YouTube video, you do the best you can.
So we're going to move on to the next portion of his comment. So for an FRFR, shouldn't you ideally be using a PA system like a DXR10 or DXR12? This will mimic the house PA as well as a studio monitor system. You can then dial in your sound and get accurate representation both live studio and at home.
So basically, if you were going to dial in your tone on a PA system, not all PA systems are created equal. So what you're doing is you're dialing in your tone on a colored kind of system, and if it sounds great on that PA, it doesn't mean that's going to sound great on all PAs. So what I would suggest is to dial in your tone on a transparent, as close to 100% transparent cab that you could possibly use, because if it sounds good on that, whatever PA you play through live, you can trust that you've dialed in your tone perfectly. So if an FOH engineer comes up to you and says, hey, your tone's not really jiving with my system.
Because they'll do that.
Yeah, they will. They'll say, well, yeah, your tone sucks.
No, I was not saying that. They're not going to come up to you.
Oh, no, that never happens. But what you can do, my first question is always, how do you have me EQ'd? Because 9 times out of 10, they have you EQ'd like a guitar amp would be EQ'd, you know? And they have settings that they saved for that to make their job simpler. So I would say run me flat for starters and then make minor adjustments from there. That's really all you got to do. Because if you dial in your tone on a transparent cab at home, it's good.
So I feel like there might be some viewers. I mean, obviously these couple of people are well versed. And what do you mean transparent cab?
Okay. Well, basically something that doesn't color your tone. So what I would suggest...
So with all the effects, you're looking for something without the effects?
Not really without the effects, but without a color. So in other words, if you dial in your cab on a cheap, like monitor kind of speaker at home, like a little Mackie Thump speaker or something like that, it's made out of plastic, it's going to sound terrible. And then you're going to EQ it so that it sounds good through that.
But then when you go to play live through a real sound system, okay.
All those ingredients you put in there to make it taste good, all those ingredients you put in there to make it sound good are now going to be way too much. So then you're going to present this through a system that represents tone and sound properly, and the guy's going to come up to you and go, it sounds like a jumbled mess. You got too many highs or too many
frosting and
lows.
Sprinkles on your dessert.
Exactly. You got way too much stuff on here. Let's take it off, and then you're going to be driving him nuts, and he's going to be driving you nuts. So find a transparent cab that works, and dial in your tone on that, so that way, no matter where you go, it's not your fault if your tone doesn't work. It's either the PA, the guy running it, or both. And that solves the problem. Now, the only exception I would say to this is if you're one of those guys that dials in your tone on your PA and you only use your PA live everywhere you go, well, then by all means, dial it in on that, because it's the only PA that's going to be representing your tone.
All right, so our next comment is from Dwayne Harlick. So given that all of the FRFR offerings in the shootout sound vastly different, there's obviously coloration across the board. How do you determine where transparency lies?
All right, Dwayne, thank you very much for your question, and it's an excellent one, actually. And that's been the challenge ever since the digital platforms have come out and become so good. So now that they're so popular, everyone's trying to really figure out what's best. So this is what's best. Compare your tone in your FRFR cab to a studio recording of that same tone. If they match, then you're good. If they don't, then you need to pick a new FRFR cab. It's pretty much that simple. And if you don't have a recording, you can go to the store and buy a good pair of studio speakers for not much money. I mean, they don't have to be amazing. They don't have to be the best, most expensive studio speakers out there. They just have to be flat. I got a pair that cost me like $150, and they're flat. And that's really all I needed. And I dialed in my tone, and I compare it to my cab, and they're almost identical. And I know that I got the right thing. So that's really all you got to do.
Okay, so the last comment we have on how to choose the right FRFR is from Mark Tempesta. Mark says, I get where you're coming from with the wood versus plastic, but 2 things. What are studio monitors made out of?
Wood.
And what are most PA speakers made out of?
There's a blend of some are wood, some are poly. It just depends.
I just want to make sure my Helix sounds good live at church through the house system, which is not a guitar cab. I want to sound good through studio monitors and venue house systems. I don't really care how accurate the sound is to amp cab, and thus far, by dialing in my tones on my studio monitors, I've been very pleased with them live and found my tones translate very well. I'm ordering an Alto TS210, which again is a PA style speaker. Yes, but that's fine because I want my tones to sound good through a PA, not through a wooden guitar style cab. Does that make any sense? And what are your thoughts on that?
It makes a lot of sense, and I definitely appreciate your question, Mark. So basically, to give you the simplest answer that I can, would be to say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know, I mean, if you're dialing in your tones on a good pair of wood studio monitors and it's translating well everywhere you go, then stick with that. You know, so do that. Now, is regarding the Alto speakers, the thing is they're probably a good PA speaker to use, and if you're going to use it for a monitor or a wedge or whatnot, I mean, that's fine. But just remember, this is your EQ curve on an Alto speaker, and on most speakers. You can have that dip in the middle, and that's what they do. So what you're going to do is you're going to overcompensate for that dip if you dial in your tone on that speaker and add too much mid-range to it. And then you're going to get into a FOH situation where the guy's going to be like, oh my God, your guitar sound is so honky, it's ridiculous. It sounds like geese flying out of the amps, you know? So you're going to want to take all the Canadian geese out of your tone, and you're going to create more work for him. Whereas if you dialed it in on an FRFR, full range, flat response studio monitor made out of wood, you're going to translate well everywhere you go. So once again, do not dial in your tone on a poly speaker, Alto or otherwise, unless that's what you're going to use to present that tone live, like in a PA situation. And then at that point, what I would recommend that you do is create a separate patch for that particular venue. You know,
Totally doable on the
yeah,
Helix.
it's totally doable on the Helix or most of the other units out there.
And even if you don't have a Helix, you could even go, if it is a church type venue, you could ask the sound guy to stay after and dial in your church tone. Or
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just buy them a pizza and hang out for an hour or two and just mess around, walk the room, use a wireless. I've done it. And make sure that it's translating well over there, and you should be fine. You know, so you have a couple of options. So I would take advantage of all of those options.
Okay, so our last category is your favorite gravity picks.
Yes, I love them.
That's right. All right, so Shred Phantom. I love your names.
It's a killer name.
These are awesome.
I know. I wish I had cool names like that.
We've got people that are like, I'm Mark, whatever, you know, I have my normal name, and then we've got Shred Phantom. So Shred Phantom says, how do these gravity picks compare to the John Petrucci Jazz 3 picks? You use those.
Yes.
I've been using them for a couple of years now.
All right, Shred Phantom. I totally understand where you're coming from, and I appreciate
Wait
your
a
question.
second, Shred Phantom. Does that mean that he's a phantom and nobody could know who it is that's shredding? He's the ghost
Yes,
shredder?
he flies up in the upper corridors of venues and shreds.
All right, carry on. Sorry.
So I wish I had a cool name like that, though. I really do.
All right.
You know, like
You challenge. Ooh, I feel a challenge coming on.
He's my nemesis. Shred Phantom.
Earl doesn't fit that one.
That's right. All right, so I appreciate your question, and I too have owned John Petrucci's picks, and I've had them for about 3 years now. I think I've been playing them, and I love them. I think they're great. The issue I personally had with them was, as you see, like his logo, which is great, and it does help grip, but I do a lot of flipping the pick in my middle finger here when I do a lot of the multi-finger tapping stuff, and a lot of times it would grip too much on my finger, and when I'd end up flinging it out and wouldn't be able to, like, oh great, you know, where'd my pick go? So the thing that I really like about the gravity picks and what drew me to them is, number one, there's a huge tonal quality about them. You can actually hear the harmonics jumping off of the strings as your pick glides across them. It's amazing. So it actually enhances your tone. And they have two kinds. They have a polished and an unpolished. And the unpolished is my favorite because it not only does it accent the harmonics a little better, but it gives you this grit you know, so when the pick scrapes across the string, there's a glide scrape kind of quality. I know it sounds weird, but it gives you a little more extra grit in your tone. And I don't have to worry about when I flip the pick. It does stick to my fingers very well, but I don't fight it to get it over to do the little thing that I got to do. So, and if you get the razor, it's the same exact size. So it's a razor Big Mini. It's the same exact size as John Petrucci's pick, and it would be an easy, Big Mini.
It's a Big Mini?
Yeah, so it's a Big Mini, and you'll transition easily over to it, and you don't have to get used to any size difference at all. So that's what I would suggest starting, is the razor Big Mini, and it's got a really nice point to it. And to me, it's perfect.
That's because you're a pick snob.
I am a pick snob. Yes, I am. I'm so snobby.
Well, we want to thank you guys again for all of the comments that you've been leaving. It keeps us going, keeps it interesting.
Yeah.
Please share our page, share our channel. That's gonna, what's it gonna do? He's gonna tell you what it's gonna do.
Well, it helps people get to know us and get to know all of the things that we're talking about. And it also, shares. That sucked. Just take that again. Well, thanks a lot for watching. We really appreciate it. And please keep commenting, keep sharing. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so, because we got a lot of great stuff coming up. We'll see you next time.